People are willing to pay for, trade for, and produce the things they need. That's the only moral way to survive. And those unable to do those things for themselves are well within their rights to rely on others, as long as they don't violate the non-aggression principle in the process. That's what families are for, that's what churches are for, that's what private charities are for. And as far as roads and things like that, if people need something, if they need transportation, then savvy entrepreneurs will fill that niche. And the same is true for education and even defense. Defense. I know that's a big one for a lot of minarchists, the common defense. Well, if you own yourself, if you are a free man, then you are responsible for yourself. It's up to you to feed, clothe, shelter yourself, so why wouldn't it be up to you to protect yourself? It's your responsibility. If common defense is necessary, which in certain scenarios it could be, you could pool your resources with your neighbors locally. The market provides for protection. Self-defense weapons are an excellent example. A lot of people that come to Liberty Fest armed. That's a perfect example. Private security firms are another option. Shep is involved in something like that. And insurance and mediation firms also could provide protection in a free society, also risk coverage and conflict resolution. If they were voluntary and market-based, they could do an infinitely better job than any government monopoly, because competition would be present. Just look at the way the government handles every task it has taken on. The post office, Amtrak, healthcare, anything. And war, since we're on the topic of defense, war is disincentivized in a free society. Only governments can socialize and hide the cost of war. Governments have tended to use war as a wealth redistribution scheme for powerful interests in the past. Strategically speaking, America is the perfect place for freedom. We are protected by the world's biggest oceans on either side. Any foreign military campaign originating outside of North America would really be utterly futile. A national type of defense, if necessary, could even be conjured without a government, if arms and bases were decentralized to a community level, but they communicated and trained with each other for joint operations if those became necessary. It could be paid for with donations and volunteer time. Who would not volunteer to protect their own land or their area? I'm sure all of us would. And even a lottery would be possible if it needed large amounts of money. As to the tragedy of the commons or the fact that some people who didn't contribute to that common defense would receive those benefits, well, it may not seem fair, but nothing immoral is going on there. Street musicians don't cry about non-donating passers-by. And if the mortars were falling on the non-donator, then the local folks who comprise the militia would be well within their rights to choose not to provide that person help. And now that we've covered taxes and defense, I want to take a crack at the concept of a social contract. A concept modern governments use to justify their actions, just as monarchs in the past used divine right for justification. Social contracts are immoral, and in essence, they are slavery. Slavery is enforcing contracts on people who weren't a party to those contracts. It's people trading you as if they own you when you never sold yourself in the first place. In a free society, I cannot be bound by any contract that my neighbor's grandparents signed before I was born, unless I voluntarily sold myself to another party. Then no decisions about me can be made without me. The Founding Fathers had an early prototype of this concept, a phrase they called no taxation without representation. And they were on the right track. But as you've seen from recent history, representation, otherwise known as voting, has proven woefully corruptible and has given a veneer of legitimacy to the majority, tyrannizing the minority. And the smallest minority is always the individual. It's me or you, yourselves. Why should the individual dilute his decision-making? If I've chosen to make my own decisions, then any force preventing me from that is aggression. Society will naturally adapt to and account for the individual decisions made by individual people. That is the essence of the free market, and that's why it works. No decision maker can ever solely coordinate the vast complexity of the market. Only the market can. The greatest good and the most balanced societies have always been born out of freedom, out of individuals making their own decisions and adapting future decisions based on the success or failure of their past decisions. That's how nature works. The whole universe is more complex and filled with more data than any man or group of men have the capacity to even comprehend, much less pretend to control. For example, this pen. A pen's parts could come from all around the world. The plastic might come from a refinery in Houston. The metal for the spring might come from a plant in Pittsburgh. The ink, I guess, comes from wherever ink comes from, squid in the ocean or something. And I could buy one for $1 at Walmart. And that whole process required no top-down control. It didn't require a pen czar or anything like that. It was coordinated solely by individuals making the most profitable decisions for themselves, and it provides a much-needed good to society. Everything can work like that if we let it. It's a principle. The specifics don't change the way that works. Any good provided by government is provided through aggression and at the expense from others. They must take from some to give to others. And sometimes this can be hidden through what we call central banking. And the public debt that comes from government monopoly on money is very real and palpable. The dollar has lost 99% of its purchasing power since the Federal Reserve began its monetary violence. Only governments and their agents could get away with counterfeiting to create such a monstrosity as an unpayable multi-trillion-dollar public debt, because their subjects have been forced to use that funny money. In fact, if you think about it, governments have been responsible for all the modern world's atrocious monstrosities, or atrocities of monstrosity, as I like to call them. 262 million people died last century from what is called democide, or death by government. This includes, of course, the Holocaust, Hiroshima, Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong's massacres, Bill Clinton's sanctions in Iraq that killed 1 million innocent children. 1 million children starved to death. You know, that's the one where Madeleine Albright said that that price was worth it. It's wrong to look up to people like that. It's wrong to aspire to be a part of a system like that, or really even to tolerate a system that organizes society by stealing from people and killing people. But look at what freedom and voluntary trade has brought us. Cell phones, computers, the Industrial Revolution, the technological revolution. In fact, all modern conveniences are brought to us by the market, not because of government, but in spite of it. When governments move out of the way, technological advances grow like weeds. Look at the internet. It was a fairly irrelevant and unknown government program until the market got a hold of it. The internet is now a living, organic example of a horizontal, self-structuring system. Systems naturally self-regulate. This is a constant, like gravity. Anything that goes up comes down. Equilibrium takes care of itself. You don't need an equilibrium czar. Pieces of paper can never change the laws of physics. Physical laws always trump paper laws. No matter what your torturer says, 2 + 2 will never, ever equal 5. Government doesn't have that power. It could never have that power, no matter how many laws it ever wrote. As those who claim to understand freedom, us here at Liberty Fest, we must stop the Santa Clausical delusions that government provides any good or benefit to society. If we can do that, we've won. Because at the end of the day, humanity is made up of individuals. The real world is dirt and water and flesh and fire. It's not institutions and it's not abstractions. It's time to man up, wake up, and embrace the real world. Every living being takes up space. It owns itself in whatever it acquires fairly, and thus it has the natural right and even a natural duty to protect itself from aggression directed at it, regardless of any thoughts or actions or social contracts written by its ancestors. Freedom is one concept. It's the white, and government will always be the black. All we have to do is white balance.